Yep.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnie Lukes here at the Crossroads, and I'd like to welcome Judy Auchterlonie from Victoria. Welcome, Judy.
Thanks, Arnie. Good morning, all.
And Beata Lukes from Adelaide. Welcome, Beata.
Good morning, everyone.
No worries. Now, the subject for today, which is quite a varied subject in its own way, is about our methods of learning, education, and other influences on us. Now, I want to actually bring up just this one web page, and it's to do with the word trivium. And trivium was a classical style of education based on grammar, as it says there, grammar, I'll highlight it, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And I want to just place that in the forefront of our mind, that grammar, the meaning of words, logic, a method of thinking, and rhetoric, receiving debate based on your method of thinking and the meaning of words so that you're able to substantiate what you had learnt as being bona fide. And I think that that in itself is most profound because it's an ancient method and it's gone on for thousands of years. But in my view, we've lost it in our education systems, in our schools. We've got Mickey Mouse subjects and we're not actually being educated at all. Anyway, I'll let others have their say. Judy.
Oh, yes. I think it's very obvious that when you're around children, that their education is lacking in so many of the finer aspects of life. And I think um, the simple practice of phonics helped me as a child, I know, to understand words and understand what I was um, learning, reading, and uh, the fact that children have lost all this is quite sad, and I don't see anything replacing it unless parents take matters into their own hand.
That's a valid point, a valid observation,
Mm.
unless parents take matters into their own hands. I've heard a saying that says if you don't agree with something, you should have the opportunity to opt out of it and let that
Mm.
particular thing atrophy. And I see that if you like methods of schooling, the education is not actually achieving a desirable result, then you should have every
Mm.
right and opportunity to allow that particular system or method to atrophy. Beata.
Yes, we would love in every department to have an option of opting out. And beware, parents, because it might be coming in Australia as it came in Germany already, that you cannot homeschool because the departments have got the right over your children, and the knowledge that they imparting on them has been prescribed by somebody else.
Mm,
Beware of that.
valid.
Um,
Sorry, Beata, keep going.
yes. Anyway, I was thinking that you, in your first comment, you have opened a subject of classical education, and you mentioned schola, which is not necessarily school. Schola in Greek, I presume, means a leisure time, something to enjoy. And those three things, rhetoric, logic, and grammar, were very useful for those people leisuring around, having time to discuss things. And the image, it conjures up the image of Socrates talking to his pupils and things like that.
Hmm.
So, yes, the method has changed. The method has been hijacked. Technology is trying to help it or maybe push it. Your choice.
Mm. I think that's a valid observation, Beata. And I noted that in my schooling, as I was entering in high school, that the exams changed from being a question and an answer to being multiple choice. And
Mm.
I also note and observe that a lot of TV shows are quiz shows of which there are
Mm.
multiple choice. And so on the
Mm.
basis of that, what it really does in my mind is it causes you to think in a fashion where you're actually processing information like a computer, but you're not actually pondering the deeper ramifications of what you've just illustrated, what you've just actually said. And for instance, if you turn around and you look at the garden behind us in the backdrop, and you may be able to name every variety of plant, but are you actually looking at the vitality of the soil and the health of the garden in its entirety and the health of the insect life in relation to the whole in relation to the whole health of the garden and your health and your
Mm.
relationship with it? It's entirely different to be able to name things like a machine than to actually look at the whole and observe. Judy.
Understanding what's going on around us, Arnie. And there's no question that um, it's a I can't it's a big process from the soil to the body, and understanding that, and in spite of attempts to what can I say, with our learning, our education, make it all one system. Uh, I think there's enough information out there for us to look into things and understand better um, how we can change things to improve things. We really do need to try and improve things out there for our children.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that. I believe that's a valid comment that the system is actually letting us down. The system of
Mm,
education, which is really child minding. And
mm,
if you look at the activist students that are making the newspapers, you recognise that the teachers have an inordinate opportunity to actually brainwash children. And then
yes.
and then you read the reports coming from the activists in the universities, and you recognise that the seat of the universities or the seminaries is actually a captured seat. It's a seat for
Yeah.
indoctrination rather than
Mm.
education. So our institutions right through, in my view, are found lacking. They're found short of the mark or wanting. And the purpose of education, in my view, is to actually instill a method of thinking into someone's mind so that they can approach any subject. That was what the Trivium was about. Grammar,
Mm.
the science of words and the meaning of them.
Mm,
Logic, logic, a method of thinking, and then rhetoric, to test your method of thinking to make sure that it could withstand sustained challenge. That's what rhetoric or debate is about, so that it actually crystallizes the subject and it brings it to the fore. And I think that as a method of education is quite profound, and it's lost in today's systems. Now we look at just as an aside, I mentioned computers. I mentioned multiple choice questions. I mentioned quiz shows where we as a people are actually being forced to think in a fashion. Instead of actually thinking for ourselves, we're actually being forced to think in a fashion. And I think that that's actually profound. It's in a lot of ways, it's quite sinister. Beata.
It is sinister, and of course, we had Orwell and Aldous Huxley, who have written the books uh,
1984.
1984,
Yeah.
and then Brave New World in the case of Huxley, of course. And they were books that were sort of telling in advance, decades earlier, what will happen with the actual influence of technologies on us.
Hmm.
And
mm,
they still valid. They, with every shade of new technology, there is something else that you discover in those books
Mm,
that was foretelling.
mm,
Yes,
mm,
it's fascinating.
mm,
Everyone should actually look at them,
mm,
read them, absorb, and see what they can do for themselves. Because meanwhile, the taboos have come onto the scene. We now cannot speak of certain subjects. They are in a law. So it would be unlawful to speak about things. There are subjects that are uncomfortable to
mm,
everyone.
mm-hmm,
It's just crazy where the world is going.
mm,
Should we be true to ourselves, or do we follow somebody else? It's newspeak,
mm,
straight from
Mm,
Orwell.
mm, mm,
If we don't understand the meaning of words, if we don't know what discriminating means,
mm-hmm,
I discriminate every day when I go to the supermarket
mm,
because I won't buy this vegetable, but I will buy organic version.
mm-hmm,
It's discriminating.
mm-hmm. That's exactly right, Beata. That your method of thinking and our response to it, if you like, we go to the science that Pavlov was the originator
Mm,
yeah.
in, and okay, he was able to get creatures to respond. But as I understand it, this science was also transposed onto humans, and so
mm,
we were able to be manipulated. Now, in other forums, I've brought up about Edward Bernays, this uh, crystallizing public opinion, which of course
yeah.
is just a form of brainwashing. And the fact is, there is a science behind it. Now, we talk about education, multi choice questions, quiz shows. We also look at computers as a technology, Wi Fi as an intrusion. I mean,
Mm,
microwave radio frequencies coming into our home, these are not healthy things. These are actually, if you like, contrary to the natural order. And I know that in our home, we work very hard to minimize Wi-Fi or mobile phone waves and all that sort of stuff. And it's all part of our response to we have a beautiful world. We are bona fide naturalists or environmentalists, but we're bona fide. Our garden is like the one behind us. This is what we live in. This is the environment we're in. And we grow as much as we can. And it's not a theoretical thing. We're not using the latest fad, latest this, latest that. We're actually working as close as we can with the natural world, being beekeepers, being animal keepers, and we also have eggs and sheep in the paddock and things like that. We're fortunate, but these are all the things that bind us back to the natural world. They bind us back to what actually works. So when we look at education, grammar, logic, rhetoric. For thousands of years, that method has worked. And now this is thrown out, and we have multi choice everything. So we're actually making decisions without actually thinking of the consequences or the ramifications or what the decisions actually mean. And that turns us into robots instead of human beings.
Mm.
Judy.
Well, if we're going to be effective communicators, we need to have a thorough grounding with our education, don't we? And it's so important to, we talked about the meaning, understanding the meaning of words. If we don't understand what words mean and we don't bother to find out what they mean, um, we're behind the eight ball right there.
Mm,
mm,
mm.
mm,
I see it as when I was training, sometimes we trained with Metropolitan Fire Service in rescue and smoke filled rooms and things
Mm,
like that. And there was a saying that people can rescue themselves, that self-rescue is important. And I'm of the view that that's where we are
mm,
as a people, that we have to rescue ourselves. We actually have
yeah,
to rescue our children. We have to stop them, the effect of the brainwashing that's going on, indoctrination that's going on in the education system, rescue our children and prepare them to think. And that's what grammar, logic, rhetoric is about. Prepare them to think so they can actually work through and debate an issue logically until such time as that, yes,
yeah.
we've got the right answer. Beata.
Mm,
yes. We have become very isolated in our rooms with our machine in front of us, and that's what's wrong. The world outside is totally divorced from us, and that's our own fault. It helps the centralizing powers to do whatever they want over us, but we've got to turn back the tide, and we've got to decentralize and we've got to make our own decisions
mm,
and learn things the old way, proper way, not just Google something and find mm, half valid information, but learn properly through the books. And remember your heritage. Don't ever forget that. Remember your classics. You
mm,
will learn more then than from any other modern thing.
Excellent.
True.
Thank you for
Mm.
that, Beata. I'm just going to call for closing comments and then I'll do a summary. So, Judy.
Well, I think Beata said it all so well then, Arnie. I'm not going to
Thank you.
try and say anything.
Well done. Beata, if you can stop your chuckling, closing comments.
Well, we'll see you next week.
Okay, all right. So this is Arnie
Good
Lukes
day.
at the crossroads, and in summary, that there is value in the classical books. There certainly is value
Mm.
in looking at grammar, looking at the meaning of words, and looking at them and working through your thoughts logically, and then let your thoughts be challenged through rhetoric, through debate, so that you
Yeah.
can actually make them robust thoughts that can handle truth. They can handle the purification of robust discussions. Unlike unlike, if you like, the what we're seeing in the universities where there's safe rooms and things like that, and people are offended by this or offended by that. They need to actually stand their ground and place their thoughts in the marketplace of ideas and let them debate and see if their thoughts are valid or not. That's what education is about, in my view. This is Arnie Lux at the
So
Crossroads. Thanks, ladies. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.